Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back to the summit. My name is Alexis Moore, and today I have Siobhan Sarna here with us. Siobhan is a TV host and founder of the SIBO SOS Summits and Community. Driven by her own health challenges, she created the Digestion SOS documentary series and various summits, including the Gut and Microbiome Rescue Summit, to share critical health insights. Her nonprofit, Chronic Condition Research, supports underfunded medical research. With her mantra, SOS, Save Ourselves, Siobhan has empowered thousands to take control and care of their health. Siobhan is the author of the best-selling book, Healing SIBO. So good to be here with you today, Siobhan. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much. We got to get the word out so everyone can feel better. Appreciate it.
I love that. So looking forward to doing that today. And today's theme is physical health, creating daily energy and lifelong wellness. So who better to have here to chat about that?
Well, that is the goal, right? We want to feel well, look good, have energy, have our brains, like it's the health span that we're looking for.
So just to start us off, and I love that word, the health span. We'll have to come back to that. Could you share a bit about your personal health journey and how it led you to become an advocate for gut health?
Absolutely. And what I'll do is I'll share this in a way that hopefully helps other people. So it's not just all about me, but because I want everyone to know that there is a lot of hope depending on how you're approaching your gut health and just your health in general, that it does take a lot of energy if you have a chronic condition, but that a managed chronic condition can help you feel 100% better than an unmanaged chronic condition. And also that working with a specialist for even 1 hour can save you years and thousands of dollars with someone who may be fantastic as a healer and have the best intentions, but doesn't have the training or the knowledge. So just like to encourage people to keep looking for people who do know the answers, because science, thank goodness, is expanding exponentially and the information is getting out there. So my health journey really started at 5 years old when I got food poisoning in India, and then had another food poisoning episode when I was about 7 on a field trip to upstate New York from the big Manhattan city when I drank unpasteurized milk because we were at a farm milking cows and having a blast. And we took a sip out of the bucket, I was a little kid, and got really, really sick. And that led to a series of digestive patterns that ultimately really led to a lot of bloating, diarrhea, constipation alternating. And one of the number one underlying causes of IBS is SIBO, and food poisoning is the number one underlying cause of SIBO. So the thing is, if somebody's listening to me right now and has bloating or the symptoms I just described, as well as rosacea, restless leg syndrome, pain, you don't have to have all of them. But if you have some of those and you're wondering, what's wrong? Have I normalized my irregular bowel pattern? Maybe it is SIBO, and it's not just IBS, and it's not just parasites. It's not parasites, but although SIBO mimics a lot of other conditions, including parasites, so it's really important to get tested so you can find out. And I worked in a moldy building for 24 years. And that really made my situation much worse over time. And I was quite ill and very bloated to the point of where people were asking me when my baby was due, when I was well into perimenopause and well out of that range of age, bless their hearts. And so I went down the rabbit hole of Dr. Google about what was wrong with me. And I came from a perspective of not that I don't think anyone knows, but I had this innate optimism was that I know someone knows. I'm going to go find them. And when I do find them, I will tell the world about it. And that's where we are.
And for those who are unfamiliar, what is SIBO? Can you tell us about that?
Thank you so much. Great. Small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And what that is when there's an overgrowth of organisms in the small intestine. So it's very much like what it sounds, the acronym stands for. And those organisms wreak havoc in the microbiome And then they lead to all those symptoms and a reduction of the optimization or the functioning of the migrating motor complex, which is a sweeping motion in the small intestine that removes debris and food from your small intestine. And when those bad players overgrow, it leads to the bloating and the constipation and the diarrhea, which, by the way, only in rare circumstances really are you doing colonoscopy and getting cultured for SIBO.
Mm.
A lot of times, and this was me, I had 3 colonoscopies like in a very short amount of time because I thought I had cancer. I just couldn't believe that you couldn't see what was happening by getting a colonoscopy. And bless my gastro at the time, he was just like, I don't know how to help you, but if you think that you need it, he allowed me to have it. So it's not your endoscopy. It's not. I hear it all the time. People are like, I had a endoscopy. I had a colonoscopy. They couldn't find anything wrong. That's not what this is.
Whoa.
Not in your typical circumstances.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating because, this is something that so many people deal with. I'm just thinking about friends, family members, and it's just so familiar to have some mystery, ongoing, like painful bloating situation or like nausea situation, or, you're out in public and then these emergencies are happening. Or it's like, oh man, it has been like a week more since I've had a bowel movement kind of thing. It's so common. And then it just seems really like mysterious. And then I think, like you said earlier, it just gets really normalized. It's like, oh, I just kind of thought that this is like how it is. So yeah. So how you have been describing the symptoms, but maybe could you share a little bit more to help people recognize in themselves, okay, this is something I need to go get tested for or pursue a different route because I've done the colonoscopy and I recognize that.
One thing is, like, think about how on television all the commercials for fiber and antacids and all of the over-the-counters. It's because gut dysregulation is an epidemic, and we find over-the-counter short-term fixes. These are not to be really used long-term. Read the labels, right? And there are consequences to overusing them because stomach acid is important. And if you get rid of all of it, it can lead to other things. But thinking of like PPIs and, the little colored pill that you take to help with all that. But basically, if you have the symptoms I described, if you have pain, if you have bloating, if you feel anxious, brain foggy, skin issues, if you have a fatty liver, there are just so many things that are related to this malabsorption. It's really a way to have a malnutrition because these organisms can consume your food prior to your body being able to absorb it. Also, restless leg, if I said it already, forgive me, and rosacea. So those are just some of the symptoms. They mimic parasites, those symptoms. They also can mimic other important things like ovarian cancer. In rare circumstances, I've heard of people who were diagnosed with SIBO, treated for SIBO, but they had ovarian cancer because bloating can be from that. So I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just saying, let's find out what's going on. So the breath test is a great way for you to determine what kind of gas you have, which will then dictate what kind of symptoms you have, which will then dictate what kind of treatment you should pursue. So a breath test is the way to go. And then there are 3 treatments that are, interestingly enough, sometimes needed to be repeated depending on how much gas they find in parts per million through your breath. So a lot of times we're told, take this Bactrim for UTI for 2 weeks, see ya, call me in the morning kind of thing. And, usually it's resolved and all is well, allegedly. Antibiotics can save lives. So I am not anti-antibiotics. I am like, in the appropriate time for the appropriate scenario, please, I would like some. However, so it's just, you need to balance it all, right? So getting educated is great. There are herbal treatments for SIBO. There are antibiotic treatments for SIBO, which, by the way, the main one, which is called rifaximin, is a very special antibiotic that is not your typical, and you can do multiple rounds without having a lot of negative consequences. which is amazing. It can even sometimes, it really helps the microbiome. And then there is something called the elemental diet, which is a liquid medical food diet that you do for about 17 days. And it's a big commitment, but it's also the most effective treatment. And a lot of people have said, oh, if I knew how well it was going to work, I would have done that first. But so sometimes you have to do multiple rounds. And so that's why retesting after the treatments is encouraged. It's an investment, there's no doubt, but it's also encouraged so that you can determine what's the next thing to do. And then there is prevention that you can take, preventing relapse, which is something called a prokinetic, which you can do natural, which is ginger, or in other similar ideas. Ginger's often in those formulations, and then some other prescription prokinetics. So there's a diagnostic, there is a set of treatments you can choose from, and sometimes even rotating and doing multiple if needed. There's another test, and then there is another treatment perhaps, and then there is the prevention of future relapses. And on top of all of that is the diet. And the diet is a low fermentation diet. It does not cure SIBO, but it does help with the symptoms.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
The symptoms. So you hear about the low FODMAP diet. Like when I went to the gastro back in the day, and he said, oh, I think you just have IBS. He told me to run 3 miles, which was a whole nother hysterical story because I couldn't really move. And then he also, gives you the old, Xerox copies that have been there for ages of the low FODMAP diet. And it's quite limiting. It's only supposed to be done short term. And it is basically, there's more to it than that, but it's a low fermentation diet. You don't want to feed more fermentation into this microbrewery that are those overgrown organisms, because that's why you bloat, because these organisms are farting out different gases, which lead to the distension.
Right. And so, okay. So when you were speaking to your doctor who you mentioned earlier, and you were asking for the colonoscopy, and he said, I don't think you need it, but you wanted to do it. Like, what was your next step where you actually found the right test?
Right. It was so weird because I was disappointed. This is insane. Okay. Just so you know, I know this is, he had the colonoscopy like the second time. He's like, Siobhan, there's nothing there. You're fine. And bless him again. It was it was deemed medically necessary. So it wasn't like he was running a scam or something, but it was just like, probably not, but okay, well, let's look. I mean, you're really sick. And I was relieved that I didn't have cancer, but I was also disappointed because I thought surely you're going to find something. So what happened was I did Dr. Google, right? I had insurance. I had a computer. I had some time. I have a college degree. I have a lot of privilege. And as a result, I went on this quest, as you hear many people who have recovered from illnesses. I went on this quest to find out what was wrong with me. And I knew somebody out there knew. And I found that person, Dr. Allison Seebecker. She is a SIBO specialist. And she wasn't seeing patients at the time. And she's not currently because she's writing a book. But she and I, as a result of our relationship and her helping me, I decided to postpone writing my book on SIBO with all of my records and everything I had been finding out. And I did an online summit. I'm a fan of summits, as you can tell. So that was my first summit, and she helped me, and she introduced me to so many colleagues and other SIBO specialists. And then I had so many things wrong with me also from the mold that I've done summits on lymph and co-hosted one on fascia and the liver gallbladder and menopause. So that really there were so many things wrong with me, and I knew so many people were helped once I got the information about SIBO out there that I was like, okay, I'm continuing this, because if I'm having a hard time, I know other people are too. And one of my favorite things to talk about are conversations that are not happening in mainstream medical appointments that really should be. Like pain in your body often is fascia being too tight, or swelling and inflammation is a lymphatic system that isn't functioning properly. So, you're in the doctor's office. They aren't talking about a hormone test necessarily for menopause. They aren't talking about fascia release. They aren't talking about lymphatic drainage. And all of those things could be helping millions of people on a daily basis. So That's why we're here.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that you had to go through all that, but I'm really grateful that you are able to come and now share all this with us. And one of the things that I notice from uh, folks who go through this is that it can be so challenging to try a treatment
Mm.
because it can just take months, and then like, oh, maybe it seems like it's better, but then the symptoms return. um or like, what is the amount of time, like when you're talking about these treatments, then what is like a proper amount of time to try something before being able to kind of deem, okay, this isn't it, or this is it?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It really depends on the individual, which I know is an annoying answer at this stage, but it does. The protocols, which this is originally developed by Dr. Mark Pimentel out of Cedars-Sinai, and this protocol I was just talking about, and then Dr. Stephen Sandberg Lewis and Dr. Allison Seebecker added to that algorithm, and have managed to really have thousands of validated SIBO breath tests that were negative based on these protocols, and was simultaneously always looking for the underlying cause. But so one treatment round of herbs is a month. The other treatment round of the antibiotics is 14 days. Another treatment round of, the different, when I say another, the alternative is the elemental diet, which is often 17 days.
Got it.
So, and then you retest, and that can take a couple of weeks. And then, you're on a prokinetic, but then if you retest and you get the results back and you realize, oh, I dropped these parts per million of these gases by a certain amount, and I have this much more to go before the test is negative, you can kind of pace out how many treatment rounds it would be. Yeah.
But that just got so much more clear and so much less kind of like, throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it sticks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's they call it first line therapies, digestive enzymes, bitters, things that if you have gut issues, those are great things to try. They are low risk, they are inexpensive often, and they are, things you should probably be doing long term anyway, because as we age, the digestive enzymes tend to go down. So augmenting them is for many people very, very helpful. Of course, this isn't medical advice. And this is Petunia the cat, who's been hanging out with us today.
Just a delight.
It's a delight. So that's a great place to start. And I know tons of people that have experienced massive improvements in their digestion from some of those things. Is it going to resolve your SIBO? No, it's not. So that's like a step in the right direction. And maybe you haven't taken a test yet, but you just, you got to start somewhere. Those are great. Digestive enzymes and bitters, which help with stomach acid production, are great places to start.
And so with, IBS, SIBO, for someone who's unfamiliar, which I'll put myself in that category, it's really easy to just kind of blanket all of this under one, like, oh yeah, IBS, SIBO, okay, those kind of seem like they're the same thing. We hear about IBS so much. So what is the important difference to know between these two, particularly if you're someone who's gone to the doctor and they've said, oh, it's probably IBS.
Right.
The symptoms match. So why is it important to keep on finding out?
Well, because IBS doesn't really have a treatment other than the low FODMAP diet, which isn't a treatment. It's just going to help manage symptoms, although it's positioned out in the internet as a treatment, like I'm going to resolve your IBS. It is a symptom management tool and can be wonderful. But I've even seen posts saying, stop pathogenizing IBS. I'm like, but Dr. Mark Pimentel has shown and proven that pathogens are driving IBS. So, excuse me. So anyway, this is another conversation. So what you want to do is figure out, do you have SIBO? That is, number one underlying cause of those IBS symptoms. IBS is a diagnosis of exclusion. You don't have colitis. You don't have Crohn's. Fantastic. You don't have some other things. So SIBO from the impaired migrating motor complex is leading to IBS-like symptoms, right? Parasites can also lead to IBS-like symptoms. Other things can also lead to IBS-like symptoms. There is a blood test now for IBS, which is so cool. And that is called IBS Smart Test. That is a blood test, and it can show if you have the antibodies as a result of food poisoning. I think there are other reasons why you can have IBS too. However, and you can have IBS without SIBO, but it's not nearly as common. So if you have these antibodies from food poisoning, those antibodies create molecular mimicry and confuse the interior lining of the small intestine so that migrating motor complex, the sweeping motion, is impaired. And if that migrating motor complex is impaired from what I just described, as well as maybe from endometriosis or adhesions in the gut or belly or organs, then the migrating motor complex may work well. But if you have endometriosis and it's pulling part of your intestine and that tissue off to one side so that you have a plumbing problem that's a physical, system issue, that can also lead to it. But it's that sort of chemical relationship of the motility that is from the antibodies that is often associated with SIBO/IBS.
Okay, so with IBS, then there's an approach that's taken to help manage symptoms, but that's not going to actually help with the underlying cause if it is SIBO.
Right, exactly.
Okay, and then so it's like, okay, it's managed, but you're going to continue to.
Well, it's managed and your diet can help with the symptoms, but you still will probably be experiencing malnutrition from the organisms eating your nutrition. You could still have fructose intolerance and histamine issues because SIBO does drive those things as well. Other things drive histamine issues too, but the impaired villi on the interior of the intestines, that does also drive histamine issues. And once the SIBO is resolved, often histamine issues and fructose intolerance also are resolved. Takes a little while, but we hear about it all the time.
This question is coming up for me right now, which is, I'm curious for you, like, what would you like to see kind of change in terms of maybe people's perspective around gut health, or maybe like a wider conversation around gut health? Is there anything that you'd like to see be a little bit different?
Oh, thank you. The whole idea just actually of talking about it, right? There's so much stigma. There's so much shame. You don't talk about, people talk about sex more than they talk about gut health. Seriously. Like if they, anyway. But if you talk about it out there, they talk about a lot of things that used to be much more stigmatized than gut health is, currently is experiencing. So I would like people to talk about it more, to not normalize it, to find out, how, like, what's normal for you. I had a nail tech. So I used to be a host on shopping TV. And so my nails had to be perfect. Like crazy, hypervigilant, perfect. So I went to the nail tech every 2 weeks. Don't talk to me about how xylene was in my body. And when I did a heavy metals test, they thought I was a welder. They literally called me to ask me if I was a welder.
Oh my God.
Stuff gets in. So no, I'm not. Do I look like a welder? Anyway, so maybe Jennifer Beals and Flashdance, that would have been fun. But anyway, so what happens is you're not talking about it. I went to this woman for 2 years, 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, and we never talked about it. I don't know what we talked about, but we never talked about gut health, only to learn later that she was really into health and I was really into health, and we could have been helping each other the whole time and comparing notes. So it's just, it's just a societal thing. So I would love to see those barriers come down and to have no shame about what is a perfectly natural body function. I'm not saying talk about it over scrambled eggs, saying in an appropriate scenario, it would be great to have more normalization about the conversations, because a lot of times I hear about women, especially going to the doctor. They're asked how often they poop, and they say, "Oh, I poop enough. It's fine." Like, really? Well, pooping only once a week is not fine. But
right.
They don't want to talk about it because they're ashamed. And also, honestly, like, who needs another project? Like, if I tell you something's wrong with me of something that I've managed for 10 years and it doesn't really bother me that much, although I think it's not great, and I'm here for something else or just my annual and I need to go pick up the kids in 10 minutes, like maybe you don't want to bring up the topic because you're overwhelmed. I get that. But taking that quiet time for yourself, taking that responsibility as an informed human being, taking care of your body vessel is a sacred responsibility. And if you want to live that your best life ever, it will require that kind of interior authority, discipline that honors who you are. And so I want to encourage everybody to do that.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It's making me think like, are we still in like a hangover from middle school where, I mean, I remember being in, middle school and being like, okay, I can't poop at school because I'm so nervous to like poop in a stall next to some like another girl from class. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that. And so are we still carrying that into our adulthood? I mean, a little bit less so, but maybe not that much. And maybe it's not over scrambled eggs, but we're catching up with our girlfriends and it's like, can we bring up what's going on with our health?
Please do. Like start it by saying, "Hey, let's talk about our health. Like let's have a collective brainstorm right now, but what's going on with you? What's going on with you?" I mean, that would be beautiful. Use hive mind as a way to help each other. That would be fantastic. That's how I actually got with my first good gastro. I had gone to one that was not good for me at the time. And then I was having lunch with a girlfriend and she had GERD, acid reflux, and she told me about this guy she thought was like a digestion detective. And it, of course, perked my ears up. She didn't know what was going on with me. And she was like, this is back in the day when like she said, I'll call them and I'll tell them to let you in, get you in. And it actually worked. Like, I don't know if that still happens, but it did that. And the man, Dr. Michael Schulman, God bless you, in Largo, Florida, spent an hour with me, like trying to suss out what was going on. And I write about him in my book because he was so great. And when I brought him studies, once I knew more, I brought him studies and he said, oh, thank you so much for this. They don't teach us this in medical school. Good for you, sir, for having the kind of ego that could handle suggestions and partner with me, because your providers, red alert, work for you. Do not give your power away. And if you're a provider listening to me right now, I say thank you for your commitment for ongoing learning and being here and adding to your skill set. That's amazing. God bless you all. And thank you for your efforts. So it's hard. Okay. You're a doctor, you're a care provider. The information is coming in buckets right now on the internet and all of this wonderful research that's happening. There's no way to keep up, but remaining open. And sometimes patients educating their providers. That's a beautiful thing. It's a relationship. And if you feel intimidated or you feel like you can't bring something up or you feel bullied in any way, shape, or form or rushed within reason, then you got to keep looking. You got to keep looking.
That's beautiful. I love that. Like, yeah, if you feel rushed, if you feel dismissed, okay, like no problem. But I actually need to keep looking because I know what's been going on. And for many, it's like this has been going on for so long. And then I even noticed, like when you said earlier, like the example of being at the appointment, oh yeah, like I poop enough. And then it's like, we don't ask what that actually means specifically. And It's like once a week, like, oh, wait, that is not enough, And so, and then with the overwhelm too, I think that the overwhelm comes from it being this vague thing of like, oh, I have no idea what's even the entry point. So it's like, if you could get a little more information, which is what I hear you providing, okay, like breath test, and there can be some steps, and then we see it go down this much, and like this much more down would be that we would be in the clear. Like that is so much simpler than this kind of vague cloud of like, oh, I don't understand.
And you feel like you've tried everything. I tried Tums. I tried fiber. I tried DocuSite and calcium. I tried Metamucil. I tried this. I tried that. Limited results. I tried it once and felt worse. So I guess nothing's going to work. I mean, it's a very tricky, slippery slope with the mindset. And that resilience that needs to be present to manage conditions is not to be underestimated, because it takes a lot to be a self-starter. And then if you get pushback from a doctor's office or whatever, or the insurance company doesn't want to pay for a script for the first time, you have to go prove that another drug didn't work. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's another job for some people. I get it. It's a part-time job for some people. And then other people just choose not to engage and just are going to hope for the best. But you're suffering in the meanwhile, and you're not living up to your potential. And then you're not fulfilling your mission. You're not being as present as a partner or parent or brainstorming that next side gig you wanted to do. You're just not living life to the fullest. So getting back to health being your huge asset and your huge treasure that you deserve to be well or as well as possible. It is a birthright and a responsibility.
Right. Right. And, the other good thing about talking about it, and you start sharing about it, you share about it with family, you share it with friends, then they can ask you about it. So that's like helpful too. It's like maybe for you, it can kind of be like, okay, I'm getting bogged down, but people can then start to actually check on you too. And so you can actually receive more support.
It's interesting because sometimes you don't want people to know your business. Like, it really depends on who it is, because you would welcome feedback from certain people. And for the love of all things holy, I don't want my mother asking me about that, right? Like, it just depends on the
right.
people. There's this book called Thanks for Your Feedback. And one of the main premises was the message may be the same, and it may even be delivered in a certain way that's acceptable, but the source matters. Because of baggage in the relationship. And that's like when this happened to me before, like, hey, honey, go get a cardio test or whatever. And then he doesn't. And then a couple of months later, he's like, yeah, this guy in the office, he just had a heart attack. And then I was talking to the other guy and like, we're going to go get heart tests the next week. And I'm like, dude, come on, you're killing me. I've been talking about that for years. Yeah. So it just timing is everything. The source is everything. Yeah. You get it. My husband's
so true. It's so true. Yeah. It's like, oh, I discovered it on my own. And so now I think it's a good idea. But when I heard it from you, it went one ear and out the other.
It's so tough. And we do it to our loved ones all the time. And it's to us. And it's just one of those.
100%. And I know we're in our last couple of minutes here. I do want to ask you, though, again, like thinking about being at the doctor's office. Okay, got a lot going on. Like, got to pick up the kids, got this, I'm here for this other thing. So, but what other ways, what other impacts can these, can SIBO have in your life outside of maybe some of the symptoms that we described? They're more, pain and bloating and all those things are serious, but does it have other impacts in your health? Like when you mention, okay, you're not reaching your potential, like in what ways does that impact maybe just your daily functioning?
Well, I think it impacts the way we feel about ourselves. Look, Americans value a 12-pack of abs, right? So you don't have a flat tummy. You feel, frankly, I felt fat and I felt extremely uncomfortable. And so it really can wreak havoc on your self-confidence. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to, feel good in your skin, feel like you're making progress. Often people who are making efforts in improving their health and their lives are feeling more of a win than once they've arrived, which is very interesting. So just that forward momentum, that forward inch by inch, it's a cinch, which is one of my favorite sayings about health. It is working a victory is very, very powerful and empowering. And good news is you start to think what else is possible. That can be intimidating because I used to be a yoga teacher, had a yoga studio. I still teach. But when people started to get really well, I've seen it so many times, what else is going to be expected of them? And that can really stop people in their tracks. Am I going to have to get divorced? Am I going to have to go back to school? Am I going to have to be a stronger boundary-oriented person? So it's kind of like a tough love angle, which I don't go there to begin with, but it's something that I think we all can take inside and consider for ourselves. What are the barriers? What is keeping me from seeking my highest and best health? So it's just something to take into contemplation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what's healthiest and it's going to look different for each of us what is the healthiest and strongest version of us for each person. That's gonna vary. And when even saying reaching your potential, I'm just thinking in terms of, your own wellness and comfortability and feeling at ease with yourself. When you are working on something for yourself and like working towards that, it just feels good, and you feel good about signaling to yourself like, this is important. I know I'm the only one affected by it, but it's important, and I care. I'm going to find that like next little step, and then that kind of translates out into other areas. So that's a really cool, kind of inspiring way to think about this whole journey.
The other thing is, you treat other people how to treat yourself, how to treat you by how you treat yourself. You are also setting up a dynamic for your kids watching how you take care of yourself. The chances are they will learn many things from how they pattern their lives consciously or unconsciously after what you do. So, and then there are other people. Have you ever cleaned the house for someone when they were coming over because they have a really clean house? And then other people, you're like, it's fine. I don't need to tidy up right now. We'll just hang on the couch. It's fine. So do you ever get dressier for some people when you're going out to lunch or coffee than other people? These things all weave in and get to us and change our behaviors in a variety of ways. So it's interesting to contemplate, what are you putting out there and how are you expressing yourself? Not for the approval of other people, but for the interior expressed through outward behavior. Anyway, I got very philosophical today. I don't always talk about it, but that's what's in my heart.
Well, I'm loving it, and I think it's really inspiring. So I'm glad that you're kind of sharing what inspires you about this, because I think that's something that can kind of be pretty universal and can help people. I should just speak for myself. I think that it can inspire towards initiating. When you think about it in that wider way, it's a little bit more inspiring than being like, oh gosh, okay, I got to go pass gas. Like at the doctor's office, I got to talk about how much I pass gas. And so just again, kind of as we're wrapping up, like, just for anyone looking to maintain like long-term gut health and also to avoid issues like SIBO, are there some daily habits or practices that you recommend?
Well, this one's going to also sound like so yawn. I've heard it before. You've got to drink enough water. You have to be hydrated. Your body if it doesn't have enough water, it is not going to perform the way you want it to. Some people's constipation can be cleared up with drinking more water. So, I mean, that's beautiful. You have to get rest. You have to sleep well. The studies are in about how even short periods of terrible sleep can lead to increased Alzheimer risk. So you have to sleep well. I mean, these are things you already know. You have to move. But I think sometimes we just have to slow down enough to be able to go, I know what I need to do. Now, how am I going to make a plan to do it? And I do see people making plans often when it is too late. Mm-hmm. So and it's very hard to get motivated by, oh, I don't want to, that'll never happen to me. So, I'm not as motivated, but it's just something to consider. And as we are evaluating our lives, I think it's what can you pull off to really slow down to make those wiser decisions.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And how can folks find out more about you and your work?
Oh, they can come to SIBOSOS.com. That's SIBOSOS. The SOS has come to mean save ourselves. And you can also find me at SiobhanSarna.com, my book, Healing SIBO. My most recent summit is the Science and Wisdom of Menopause Summit, because I'm taking on all the stuff that's happening to me. And I've done the lymphophagia and all of those, and now it's menopause. And so I'm really excited about that and helping women get the help that they need.
That's wonderful. And just for everyone, Siobhan also has a podcast over there on Apple Podcasts or whatever you get your podcast too. So another great resource. I just had to plug it. It was definitely helpful to me in preparing for this talk with you, which was such a joy. And somehow you make talking about all this fun. So that's really cool.
He says hi. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us, Siobhan.
Thank you.